This is the introduction for our next unit. It's titled Early Republic. And we're going to be looking at the presidencies of the first five presidents who were in the order they came in: Washington, Adams, Jefferson, James Madison, and James Monroe. I think we've spoken about all of these people to this point except James Monroe. So we will break up this unit into two different sections. So one big unit, two chapters, let's say. We'll have a look at their presidencies from a political perspective first, and then we'll deal with how they handled foreign affairs. Foreign affairs deals with foreign nations and how they dealt with them. So let's talk about Washington first. Some background knowledge on him. Obviously, the first president. He was born into a wealthy Virginian family, fought for the British in the French and Indian War. So this would be 1750s and 60s, long before America declared its independence. Most colonists consider themselves to be British, so he fought for the British. He gets military experience. When it's time for the American colonists to rebel, he's going to be the commander of the Continental Army against the British. And then he showed up again when we talked about the Constitutional Convention. He was the president. He was the first president also of the United States. This is after, once the Constitution goes through, it was his idea to have an inaugural address. This is when the president is sworn in, they give a speech and talk about their goals and things like that. There's nothing in the Constitution that says they have to do that. He just said, I want to do this. Every president since then has followed his lead. Married but never had children, which makes him kind of unique for a president. Some myths of George Washington. There are a lot of them. Chopping down the cherry tree, the wooden teeth, couldn't tell a lie. Supposedly during the Revolutionary War, he throws this coin across the Delaware River. Most, if not all of these, are untrue. The reason why, following his death, he was idolized. Most people wanted to remember as being greater than human because they looked up to him so much, and he did so much for the country. He helped him defeat the British. He's the first president. So shortly after his death, a man named Mason Weens writes a book, and he's really the first to write a book about George Washington. And in this book, he exaggerated a lot of these things. So over time, these stories, which weren't not true, were passed down as myths. So George Washington chopping down the cherry tree probably never happened. Wooden teeth. He did have fake teeth, but they just weren't made out of wood. They were made out of ivory. So he was also very wealthy. He was worth, at the time of his death in today's dollars, he's worth about $500 million plus dollars, making him the second richest president ever. Donald Trump was the wealthiest president we've ever had. However, most of his wealth was in the form of his estate. He had an estate in Virginia called Mount Vernon. It was a huge working farm, grew lots of different crops, tens of thousands of acres, also a slave owner. He owns during his lifetime over 200 slaves, although he did free most of them by the time he died. So if you looked like at his bank account, he never had a lot of money in his bank account. He was very, very wealthy, but that wealth was in the form of land and slaves and farms and things like that. As president, he made $25,000 a year, which today doesn't sound like much. Today's dollars, that was over $1 million. And as I kind of mentioned up here, although he was very wealthy, he often took out loans because he was cash poor, meaning, yes, he was worth $500 million, but he never had a ton of money in the bank because it was tied up into other things. So he often took out loans from friends and family to pay basic expenses almost. So Washington is our first president. The man next to him is John Adams, who was his vice president. We'll talk about later how or why he was the vice president. So precedent, new word. Precedent is something that's done or said that becomes an example for others to follow. Because George Washington was the first president, future presidents are going to do things that were similar to what Washington did. Washington knew this ahead of time, so he knew other presidents would copy. So therefore, in the back of his mind, he always wanted to do very, very good things as a president to set an example for future presidents. If he does a bunch of bad things, then they're going to copy that in the country. It doesn't look so good. Okay, when George Washington came into office, this is all true. There were a grand total of 75 post offices in the United States. He had an army of 672 soldiers, and the country was in massive debt. The country was in debt from the Revolutionary War. Wars are really expensive, even though the Revolutionary War ended in 1782, I believe, 1784, somewhere in there. 5 years later, the country is still at debt. So he needs help. So what he's going to do is he's going to appoint a cabinet, which we've spoken about. President's cabinet, a group of advisors who help the president in their specific area. They oversee certain departments, which helps run the government. So today, the president has a cabinet that's 14 or 15 people. Those are those secretaries we spoke of: Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, Homeland Security. So Washington, being the first president, sets up his cabinet. You'll see it was much, much smaller. Where today we have 14 or 15, he had exactly 3. And he picked 3 men he knew well. Alexander Hamilton is going to be the Secretary of Treasury. The Treasury is in charge of economics, money, currency, anything financial is the Treasury Department. The State Department is the department that deals with foreign nations. So his Secretary of State was Thomas Jefferson. He chose him because Jefferson already had experience doing things with foreign countries, just like Alexander Hamilton had experience with this. And then for the War Department, he picks a man named Henry Knox, who had military experience. A little bit of foreshadowing: these 2 men, Alexander Hamilton and Thomas Jefferson, do not get along. Pretty much everything that Hamilton wants to do, Jefferson disagrees with, and vice versa. What Jefferson wants to do, Hamilton finds issues with. That will be a theme throughout this unit.